I'd like to call this meeting to order on Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025. Public participation. Ann, did you get anything?
No.
Okay. And I don't think there's anyone from the public joining us either. I don't see anybody on. Okay. New business, the water and sewer rate discussion. Joe,
Yep.
or Ann, you want to take?
I'll drive. I have the stuff to look at right in front of me. I don't know if you need to make me host though, Chris. Or at least let me share.
You should be able to share. I don't think I.
No, you have to allow it. Sorry.
Usually it shouldn't. It wouldn't let you share now.
Second. No, it says the host is not allowing it. If you have a passcode or something, you can send it to me. I can try it that way too.
Oh, go ahead now. Sorry. I just fixed it.
All right, perfect.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. All right, I think we're in. Can everybody see the graph that you're all pretty used to?
Yes.
Okay. I'll blow it up a little bit. Hang on.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Now I don't have to put the glasses on. Thanks.
I can go bigger if you want. I'll just be scrolling around.
Perfect.
Okay, so where are we now? After last meeting, we came back and took some of the comments that you all gave to us, and we came back with 3 additional looks for you to see. Most of them are relatively the same on the water end, and then we show at least 2 different ones for sewer, just to see what that may look like. And then depending on, the discussion and how we feel about that, totally up to the board here. If you're comfortable to vote, we can vote. We'll have a few different items to vote on, basically everything pretty much the same as every other year. That we'll put the packet together and ship it off when we're ready, and have our hearing on the 23rd in front of the council. So I'll probably be a little bit brief on the first 2. This is just your basic every year, the do nothing scenario, right? So if we don't do anything, we do our due diligence to try to figure out what the future will look like in that set of circumstances. Everything you'll see here today. So just as a reference up front, the discount at 10% would remain intact. So there's no proposals on that at all anymore. And then some of the projections of the retained earnings. So we knew that over the last couple of years, we're trying to hit 8% of our operating budgets. We originally started at 10. S&P told the town that for a AAA community, they'd actually like to see those a little bit bigger. So what we did was we threw a range. On a low year, we'd like to be around 8. But between 8 and 12 is kind of the range that, ideally we'd like to hit. So you'll see that kind of as we move on. But essentially, in front of you now, this is water. So no surprise. If we don't do anything, the expenses and costs to delivering water to everybody keep going on. We just sink, further and further and further into deficit. Sorry, I don't have this set up in a PowerPoint, so I got to scroll. Related to sewer, so the do nothing scenario for sewer, actually, when we run it through, kind of the process we've been doing for the last couple of years, well, we actually show a surplus here. So 2026, assuming that, we spent the budget completely, and all of our projections as far as collection percentage and consumption come in, we're showing about $328,000 of a surplus there on the sewer end. So remember, sewer is a little bit better picture than water right now, and obviously that's reflected here. If you look at the out years here, again, not super huge consideration, but something, just to keep our eyes on. if we continue to do nothing as the years go out, the trend will follow water and the curve will start diving deep to the right. So getting into it, option one, the new option one, I should say. So what we looked at here, we talked last year and then this year again about the service charges that we had, what our initial goal was back when we started. Obviously, that got tempered and throttled back because of all the changes that happened out there in the world. Much like last year, to try to reduce a little bit of the volatility that consumption and weather can play into it, we started to try to ramp the service charges a little bit. So all of these next three that you'll see will include that and be 10% over the other year. So option one here is water. So this is showing you what the flow component increase being 8%. Combined with the service charge I just talked to, run through the machine that we created and what the 2026 projection will be. So it shows us about $500,000 in change as a deficit. Our retained earnings will be about the same at the end of the year, which is essentially our cash or our piggy bank for emergencies. And we're anticipating that that is about 6.1%. Again, the assumptions in this is that all the revenue and collections stay the same, and that the budget is expended 100%. Related to sewer, I think it was Elena asked to see, if we had a couple options where we went up a little bit from the 0 that we had shown to see, what that might look at. So here's the first one here. It's just basically just threw a dart at it and said, what does 2% project out to be? What does that look like? From a flow component piece to this, and then included with the service charge increase of the 10%. So here we have 26 actually projected about 200,000 and change more than the do nothing. So just shy of 600,000 would be the surplus in sewer. And then, we forecast if this were to be the case, that retained earnings would end up somewhere, just shy of 16% at the end of the year. I could keep going. We can do all three and then circle back to these, or we can stop. This next slide is just the summary that we're asked, to show you guys. I think it kind of puts it in perspective when you get here into the what does this do on a per bill impact. So this is just the sum of the two options that I showed you, and then it's compared to some of the average user classes that we have here. We compare current and a potentially proposed bill, and then what that difference actually will be in the aggregate. So even though water in this scenario is 8% and sewer is 2%, what that looks like in the total bill is somewhere between 2.5% and 5.5%. So
yeah, Joe, go through each one, Joe, if you don't mind, that way, and then we can circle back to them.
Perfect, no problem. And if I'm going too fast or bridging over some of this, let me know. Just tell me to stop. Sometimes I take for granted that we've done it a few times, so I don't want to leave anything out or not be as transparent as we need to be with this. Option 2. So this is slightly adjusted. So instead of 8% for water, we bumped it up to 9%, just to see what the projections for 26 will do. So the deficit ends up dropping a little bit. And then, if everything comes out the way that we would expect it to, we look to forecast a retained earnings budget at somewhere just shy of 7%. As the curve kind of showing the out years, and then as we always do, we kind of show what the out years would be. Very assumptive, but just something to keep in mind. Really, the only column we're concentrated on 26. On the sewer end, instead of 2%, this is what 1% projects out to be. So a slightly higher surplus than the do nothing, slightly lower than the previous set of options here. So 1%, for 26. Just shy of $500,000 in a surplus. The projected, available retained earnings at the end, once we certify, we think will be around 1.4 million. And that would equate to about 15% of the sewer operating budget. Just the two in summary, very similar to what you saw before. The combined difference here in this scenario is somewhere between 1.5% and 5.3% in your bill. So in aggregate, we can stop and come back to these in a second. And then lastly, we try to keep it simple and stick to 3, so we don't have, 27 of these things to vet through. But water, so this is a little slightly higher, so it's 10% on the flow. And, the service charges we talked about, this projects out to a deficit of about $400,000. In this one, retained earnings will bump to about 626, and we will come in just shy of the 8% target at about 7.6% of what we're looking to have available to us, for emergencies. Related to sewer, we actually went back to 0 on this one, just to show that because the water had gone up, a couple percent through the different versions. We brought back a 0 here. Honestly, myself personally, I did not want to re-show 0 again. I think we're fortunate that we're in the position, where we can entertain that, and it's not something that we feel like is going to be fatal to us. So I just wanted to revisit that. Again, in this scenario, we'll show a surplus of about 400. Projected at the end of the year, be almost 135, and the retained earnings will be about 14%. This combination, they're all super tight to each other basically, but the range that you see in this, when put up against the bills, is anywhere between just over 0.5% to 5.2. So because of the way that we're structured, and our customer base is, there's over 7,000 accounts, they're, more residential. That's why this ends up skewing a little bit, towards that 1,000 cubic foot user versus like someone at 30,000. This option of the 3 that I just walked through represents the lowest for that user, albeit not, overly impressive, but, a little bit more than the other ones. This one for us we went back and looked at this, we said, okay, we figured out the difference between, revenue and expenditures, and we said 16% in the beginning. So we kind of started at 8 as the benchmark or the pivot point in the middle, and then worked, plus or minus off of that. We felt when looking at this, because of the situation sewer is in, we could probably end up going, to basically nothing there. And using that to let us try to recoup a little bit more of that gap that we talked about on the water side. But at the expense of being overly brief, that's what we have for you to see today. So I'm more than happy to slow it down, look through it, talk amongst yourselves. I'll turn it over to you and the board, Mr. Chair, and we can kind of discuss it from there.
Yeah, let's go over each summary. Each option summary. Please.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So this is the first one right here.
Joe, do you know, and if you don't know, it's fine, on the 10% service charge increase in each water and sewer, do you know what kind of dollar value that equates to in terms of how much more you'll collect on just the service charge than you did like this year?
I don't have it in front of me because I'm sharing it, but I'm looking at Ann. I'm sure she could figure it out in about 2 seconds.
Yeah, I thought it was about $70,000.
Okay.
I
it's not a
thought,
lot,
let
but
me keep looking, but I thought that's what we had talked about.
Okay.
And Joe, most residential customers, right? Their meter size is what, the 5/8 inch, the
Yeah,
2,000
so
cubic feet.
Yeah, if you remember, way back when we did this, most residential is anywhere, it's either 5/8 or an inch. There are some 3/4 out there that happened, throughout time, but so when we looked at that, we kind of, initially, when we set up that whole meter methodology, what we'll call the average residential home, is anything with a meter 1 inch and below. So you don't get into that whole group, the cost for them is the same. It wouldn't be till you get anything bigger than that, where that would change. And, once you get over an inch, you're starting to get into like 8-unit buildings or commercial property that, requires more, things like that. So, and that first tier, for lack of a better term, for the service charges, again, it's almost 7,500 of the customers, so it's the biggest. By a
Okay.
long-
Like, so, yeah, and we might have went over this before, but like, for instance, like the new apartment buildings that are going in there along the lake,
Yep.
what category would those be in
So those
once
need to
they're
be,
open?
they need to be 3s or 4s. I think the ones, so 200 Quantipower, I think there's 3 buildings there with 4 meters, and I think they're all 3-inch.
Okay, okay,
So they would, so Chris, that would all get sized depending on like the volume, the plumbing needs and things like that, to put the right meter in there to make sure, it registers appropriately and whatnot. They'd fall all into that category. I know like the high school will probably end up being a 4 just because of the size of it. I think the Galvin is, 4-inch meters in town, there's less than half a dozen.
okay,
You have to
okay.
be, you have to be pretty big, when you get into that range.
Yeah, I was just curious if like that's gonna, there's a lot more of that stuff going in, so if that's gonna affect us, down the road.
I think that's
Um,
a good question. Yeah, it could skew the numbers, right? So I see where you're going. Yeah.
you would have, so it would, obviously you'd add another account, right? So it'd be another account that contributes to that overall service charge pot. The other thing you'll see, we won't know unfortunately until we can kind of see what their consumption patterns in, obviously for every cubic
Right.
foot, there's, the component to recover what we're paying out to operate. And then, a tiny bit, it's not profit, but, there's a tiny bit factored into it to make sure that you have that reserve capability. So, anything that they're flowing there is obviously generating, revenue, albeit, on the smaller end. So you should see, that affect you a little bit. So I would say that water consumption would likely be higher when it's fully online, and, the revenues should, follow suit with that.
Nice. No, I was just curious. I think we went over that a long time ago, but it kind of came to my mind again since we're on the subject.
Yeah, and I don't think, they
Thanks.
don't have occupancy yet, off the top of my head. I think they're getting close to at least one of the buildings. So that would be something that we would probably anticipate coming online sometime between now and the end of the summer, at least for the first phase, maybe the whole thing by this time next year. They seem to be pretty motivated to get people in and get people living there too, so.
Wow.
I wasn't aware of that either. I
Okay.
thought we had longer, but already open. Wow.
Yeah, so they're getting close. I know that, some of the things that they're doing up there are all in preparation of getting, at least partial occupancy signed there, so. I would think, they're probably at the point now where they've got a bunch of debt hanging out there for construction. They probably need the rental,
Yeah.
incomes to start, helping solidify. But stay tuned.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, can you
Yep. Sorry
scroll,
about that, Drew.
Yep,
can you scroll up to for this option to the water graph?
yep.
So basically, we're saying that every year
Mm.
we're going to be just dipping into that reserves. Like this proposal, we're using over $500,000 of reserves just to cover our needs.
Mm.
So I feel like that's a little uncomfortable. even though I recognize, I mean, we want to mitigate the rate, but I think, you know, we also don't want to have a 12% rate increase on the water next year. So I personally feel a little uncomfortable with the 8%.
Yeah, and then some of the assumptions to this too, so obviously this is assuming that, everything is spent at 100%. That's generally not true. Somewhere between like 2.5% and 3.5%, is usually what we're turning back. I know come like January, what we'll end up doing is Ann and I will watch. We basically talk two things every day. We talk trash every day and we talk water and sewer every day. But we'll watch, the consumption and the billings and things like that. And then we'll pivot operationally to make sure that we're doing some things that, we're not taking on more expenditures or things like that. We'll tread a little bit more carefully and be as efficient as we can, getting into it to try to limit what that impact, might end up being. We would never defer anything that, would end up being a negative to us and, push the problem down the road. But if there are some things that, we would typically, maybe bring somebody in to help us with, but the collection report come like April isn't, it's looking okay, but it's not in the greatest point. We might turn inside and then take on some stuff ourselves and try to save, a little bit that way.
But you probably are never underspent by $500,000, right? Or maybe?
No, I don't think so. I mean, two, maybe, give or take, depending on, what's going on, with like personnel. Sometimes if we have somebody leave, and, there's a vacancy just because hiring in this world, it's dirty work and it's physical. Sometimes it's really easy, and then sometimes it's a little bit more difficult when people kind of get the reality of what they might be tasked to do. Sometimes you might have a year where, it took a little while to put somebody in the seats. You might get a little bit more savings there, but honestly, if we had anything too large, there would be a good argument to say, if we're turning over $1 million a year, that we're really not budgeting correctly to begin with.
Yeah, that's for sure.
One of the things that's concerning this year is the collections aren't as good, and we did lean $131,000 more than we did last year.
Right. Plus, when you look at 2025 is also a loss, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm always told I'm kind of like a bullet person, very direct. I'll just kind of put it out there and looking at the three, I kind of like option two. It seems like kind of the Goldilocks of, because I think 10% it might scare people. 8%'s too low. I think kind of the option two to me seems like the good balance, but obviously
Can we
open up
look
for
at option
discussion.
two,
Absolutely.
the review,
Yeah.
please?
You just tell me,
Why you say-
I'll move
why-
accordingly. I'm just the pilot.
No, since Shane brought it up, I just wanted to have it up as he was bringing it up so we could look at the review one.
All right, this is a summary to that.
Here we go.
I think one thing that does appeal to me about option two, even though I do find the water still to be a little
Yeah.
perhaps underfunded, but I do like the fact that that 2,000 cubic feet gets it under 5% for the change from last year's bill. And I know that's, 4.9% versus 5% is just sort of semantics at that point, but I think it looks better to the
Agree.
public. Or to the
I
council.
agree.
Was $1 billion business in marketing all over that, 99 cents versus $1,
Yeah.
True. And then you hope, even though it doesn't really move the needle a lot, but hopefully that translates into a savings for someone that, could have some sort of tangible effect for them for sure.
So Joe, I'm curious, are you comfortable with the water on option two?
Yeah, I was gonna try to not give you my opinion on it, just so I don't want to influence anything, but I think any of the water options we're comfortable with. That's why they're here.
Yeah.
I know myself personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable showing you something that I think is a bad move.
Okay.
You know, or gonna make, you know, it's easier to make the harder right now than not, and then find out it's 2 times as hard the next time we regroup because, you know, of all the different things that can influence this, so.
Mhm.
The long way of saying, I think we're comfortable with any of the water ones proposed.
Okay.
Joe, can you show option 3 too?
I was gonna say, my only concern, I guess, here, and we could certainly do it, but just kind of looking out, for the sewer, I would say we got to do more than a 0%. Even though it's looking good, I just think if we're going to have a shortfall elsewhere, we can maybe make some of it up with the sewer. So that's why option 3 for sewer, I feel we should have, a higher increase.
Just keep in mind, so this, all of these two also, the two parts to it also show the service charge change. 10% like it did last year, so it wouldn't be necessarily a true zero. It would,
Right.
you know, bump a little bit, but, you know, as far as the volumetric piece, that is proposed at 0 here.
And we do go through these every year, so, if you technically could change something next year.
I mean, so if sewer is just knocking it out of the park and, it's always easier to decrease the rate than increase it is my thinking, so.
Yeah, and really so the two differences in this, I think I had mentioned it last time, but the big driver, at least on some of the water end, you know, administrative costs, so like they're self-sustaining, so anybody that's employed there, they pay their own insurances, they pay their own benefits, retirement, things like that. You know, those costs are what they are in our private lives and our public life. Those are a little all over the place and on the increase. And then the big thing on the water end is just capital. So you hear us talk all the time. We're very fortunate that the MWA gives you a great deal on sewer work, at least the lining out in the street where you get $1 million project and only have to pay back 25% of it. I still submit anytime I get the chance to recommend that they do it on the water end. It's starting to happen there, but it's not hugely there. You know, and you had a couple of big projects that went through. So, you know, that's another big driver there. And we don't want to not do capital work and defer because, you know, obviously we're kicking the can down the road to cause ourselves to spend even more. And if the foundation in the road's not right, you know, then everything else above it suffers because that has to then be delayed too. So, you know, that's some of the big driver there. And where sewer, obviously, you know, it's a little rosier as far as the options available to you to accomplish what you have to accomplish, and then, you know, only have to pay back 25% of it's fantastic. For the most part, I should say.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all kind of so close numbers wise when you look at the differential percentage, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I like, if I went by just, the numbers itself, obviously I like that the bill looks cheaper in option 3, but I'm not against option 2 at all either. I think it's safe to say no one likes option 1, so you can rule that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really torn between the two. I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of like option 3 in that the water reserves don't dip quite as much. But at the same time, I think it is a good point that 10% just sounds high to people. And then it is always nice to have at least a little bit of an increase on the sewer. So I don't know. I guess I think I'm leaning a little toward option 2, but I'm happy with either one if the group
Go
supports.
back to option 2, please.
Mhm.
Sorry, Elena. I just wanted to have it up when you were saying it.
Sure.
I like to look at it. Yeah, I mean, it's not. Yeah, I think I agree there. Looking at it, it's really not that much difference, and you're still getting a little bit for sewer, and I do agree that 10% that stands out to people. I do agree.
Yeah.
I like option two.
Would you,
Well,
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I would say I like option two too. I mean, I don't know. Should I suggest a vote for it?
We can.
Yeah.
You can
So
make a motion.
the other thing we can do too, just to throw it out there, it require a little bit of math, but on the fly here, but you could split it. So if you like what option two shows in water, and you like option three for sewer at 0, you could do, you're not stuck by saying you gotta pick 1, 2, or 3. You can mix match to whatever, is consensus. I just don't want anybody to think we're boxed into this. You don't have to be.
No. I do like the point of, collecting something for sewer,
Yeah, me too.
even if it's just 1%. I feel more comfortable with that.
Same here. Yeah, I
Because
mean,
next year it would jump out to someone. Oh my, the rate jumped, significantly the next year.
Yeah, I mean, it might be because we did 1% this year, we can get away with like, 1 or 2% again next year, which just sounds great to have multiple years that low, as opposed to 1% this year and 5% next year or something.
So another thing that we do have coming down the pipeline at some point, probably after the rate setting process this year, we'll have to open back up the topic of irrigation and what we want to do with that, so that we can, send another document off to the town council. So we reference in that quite a bit that we know that there will be a shift. So, should the council change the moratorium that they put in place, some of the sewer revenue will obviously, decrease. To what level, is a little bit speculative, but we always include in that memo that if we know that, we may be inclined to do that, that the recommendation in the past has been to the council that they need to strongly think about raising the sewer reserve to be able to handle that shift.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So we're
Yeah.
just building up a little more capacity to make the shift.
I feel like you're probably close there, the last time, and then a little bit of unpredictability got us gun shy, but that's what the recommendation was at the time, and the council followed suit. So, that's just another consideration, that would have an effect too. So, if you did go 0 now and change that, what the future increase to reserves to kind of make sure that that change is palatable and able to be handled. We don't have that today, but it is something that probably late July, early August, whenever we reconvene again, will be on the table again for us.
Mhm. Yeah, again, I think that just helps solidify option two to me. It just really seems like a good balance.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I'll make a motion to recommend option 2 to the town council.
Second that.
Second by Shane. Okay. Motion made by Elena. All in favor?
Aye.
Right?
Aye. As well. Motion carries 3-0 for option two.
All right. I'm gonna stop sharing this and show you. This next one should be super familiar, anyway. Kind of some legacy votes, really, but included that we send every year. So we had the water rate, the sewer flat is included in the options that you guys just discussed. Then as in years past, so we actually have a fee in place for manual reads. Still never used, but something there if we really have particular trouble getting a read from someone or getting access to change a meter, there is an option to enforce this and add a fee to the bill, because by that point in time, we're kind of chasing our tail against it. That is unchanged. We're also, we have our septic disposal formula. Nothing's changed here either. Really, what it is, if you have a septic pumping truck or you have, there used to be a gentleman in town with a camper that would use it from time to time. And they needed somewhere to offload, what goes down the drain or, into the back of their pump. They show us a manifest and then we provide them a place to get rid of that. It's really a formula. So it's the same $110 base fee for showing up. And then if it needs to be done via emergency or whatever the case may be, where it's off hours, contractually, we have to pay our staff a minimum, and then it would be whatever their rate is at the time, times overtime, so we make out whole. So that's unchanged. The other thing we were talking about this year too, that we haven't talked about in a while, but it's come up a couple times, is our final read fees. So essentially every time that a real estate transaction happens or a property changes hands, obviously it triggers a final read. The previous owner or whoever's building it, makes themselves whole with whatever is used or whatever they owed, and then it transitions into the new owner, tenant, what have you, taking over possession of the bills. Right now, that is set at it's $50 per final. And we wanted to talk to you guys about it. We found lately that the number of final read fees that we're doing is about 225 a year, right, Ann?
260 so far this year, so we'll probably end up
Oh.
at about 275.
So 275, what does that equate to? What does that actually take to do? So we have to send somebody to the property, walk around, take a look at things, make sure that the system's functioning, really just inspect that everything we anticipate to be there is there and it's in good working order, and get a read from that. When that's done, they'll bring it back to the office, send it to the office. And then, the folks here would put together a bill, work with the real estate agents to get them all the documentation they can do to do that. So what you end up having in the end of it is, about 2.5 hours of staff time. And the cost to that is somewhere around $80 versus what we're recovering in the fee. So we just wanted to bring it up to talk about it to see if there was any appetite to move that. So at least, we get a complete cost recovery or a little bit closer to that at this time.
I think it makes sense
Yeah,
to bring.
yeah, definitely want to even that out.
So we'd like to propose $100 for the fee. And I know it sounds like a lot, but one, it's people who are selling their property and need it done urgent. They need a copy emailed to themselves, to their attorney, to the buyer, and then they come in and they're like, please print us a copy so we can pay it and get our receipt. So there is it's becoming, I think, a little more labor intensive. And we do find a lot of people don't find out to the closing until very late now. So we get a lot of calls like, it's Monday at 4.
I need
They're
it,
hoping to
yeah.
close tomorrow at 10.
Yep.
The other
I
thing,
get you.
the other thing you'll find too, and not that it's a criticism or anything like that, but real estate is what real estate is now. This is something that, at least when I was cutting my teeth coming up through here, we really only heard from the agents. So now Ann and her staff up front will get a phone call from the agent, from the owner, from the seller. And we found that you're constantly taking time to explain it to every single party. So, it's not a knock on anybody, but as she said, the labor, or at least the amount of time that you're taking to do one very simple and easy task, right, on its face, is kind of ballooned a little bit. And for us to be able to really change that, we'd have to change the tendencies of the customer. A little bit of an uphill battle on that one, but
I was hoping to charge 2% of the sale value, but I think that would be turned down now.
No, I think $100 is fair. I mean, you just named off about 3 different people that probably, get their hands in the process,
Yes.
so if that's consensus and you're so inclined, we could request a vote on that.
So I'll make a motion to, do we need to vote on the 2 fees that we're not changing or no?
Yeah, so what I would say really is just, you can accept them probably as described or, as presented. For 4 and 5, and then I would do a separate one for 6, just because it's new and we had to discuss it, but.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to accept items 4 and 5 as described, as shown. Did we lose Shane?
Yeah, he just texted me, he got booted off, but he's gonna join us back.
Okay.
I'm gonna second your motion, Elena, anyways,
Okay,
so we can keep it
Yep,
moving.
Second.
So, Elena made a motion, Chris seconded it for those 2 fees to stay the same.
yeah, so should we take a vote? Or
Yeah,
did you want to wait for Shane?
Yeah,
I would defer to you.
I don't think he'll, yeah, I don't think it's a big deal to continue this it's a 2-0 vote.
Yeah, and I don't, right, even if it was, even if you voted no, it would still.
Yeah,
And also, these are the 2 that aren't
Yeah.
changing, so yeah, I'm comfortable voting.
sure. So Elena, made the motion and I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 2-0. And if Shane, let's see if he's. is he
Do we
back
have
yet?
other business after this final read fee?
No, we're trying to keep it brief because I think you had a city council meeting tonight, if I remember right.
Me?
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, I thought I did and now I don't, but I have something else that I'm
Oh.
trying to take Jack to at 6:30, so it
lucky
would
you.
be awesome to be off early. So I'll make a motion to set the final read fee at $100.
And I'm gonna second that as well. I think that's fair. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 2-0.
All right.
So that's all we had.
Yeah, and if,
For this one, I will kind of condense this, put the presentation together in a draft form. I'll shoot it out to everybody so you have it to see it, and then this will move forward and go to the town council on the 23rd. I think it's 7:03.
All right. Yeah, I can't make it on the 23rd. I don't know. I think I had already mentioned that.
Fine, hopefully, I'm gonna, usually what I'll end up doing is sending it to the council early, that if anybody has any questions, it's easier to take your time and work through it. Especially some of the newer members who may not have seen it before, it is kind of like a foreign language to some people, so, they'll get that, well in advance, and then we'll take their feedback and keep on going. Oh,
All right. Here's Shane.
yeah, Shane. Just in time.
Sorry about that. I can't
sure.
believe it's still happening. Sorry.
Totally fine.
It's okay. You didn't miss much.
You didn't miss much, but we're all done.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Well, all right. So we were just talking about the future then. All right. I'm leaving the camera off just if that's maybe what's causing it. I don't know. But at any
Shane,
rate.
I don't know how much of
No
it you
problem.
got, but just to get you up to speed, did you hear the discussion on the manual read fee and then the septic disposal fee?
Yep. Heard all that. Yep.
Okay, so 2 unchanged from last year, then how much of the final read fee discussion did you hear?
I think, yeah, you were chatting about it, that it was still $50,
Yeah,
right? And then I think that's when I got cut out.
gotcha. So basically,
We bumped it up to 100.
Yeah, that makes sense. Perfect.
And that's it. That's all we voted on. That's all that happened.
All right.
that's it. We
What
kept
do
the
we have?
agenda
What do we have for next
short.
meetings, Joe?
You know what, Ann or I will reach out and see, because we'll have the rate hearing the end of the month, and then the 4th of July. We'll see, maybe we shoot for the end of July, early August. We'll throw a couple of dates out there and whatever works. I know vacations and stuff get kind of goofy.
Yeah.
Unless we have the need for something pressing, I don't see anything coming down the pipeline that would have to convene us at this time, so.
No problem. No problem. Well, that's the case, I'd like to make a motion, for adjournment at, 6:17 PM.
So
Do I
moved.
have a second?
Yeah.
All in
Second,
favor? Aye.
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 Motion carries 3-0. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you.
All right,
Oh,
thanks.
thanks.